Welcome back to the Gallant Goblin. I'm Theo, and today we're looking at the Icons of the Realms Rage of Demons sets of pre-painted miniatures. Rage of Demons was the overarching story plot in the fall of 2015 for Dungeons & Dragons that covered tabletop and video games, among other properties that they had going on at the time. The actual adventure that this was supporting was called Out of the Abyss. This set is a bit unique among the Icons of the Realms sets in that they had 49 miniatures instead of 44 in there, and they included 16 rare creatures instead of the usual 12. As we've talked about before, if you get a case of boxes, which is 32 of these booster boxes, you usually get 12 rares, which covered the 12 rares that were in a set. But this set has 16 rares, and so when you buy a case of these, which is pretty expensive, you're only going to get 12 of the 16 rares, and you're going to be 4 short. The only other way to get those 4 extra miniatures besides just trying your luck at more booster boxes is to go in the aftermarket and pick them up there, and some of them are fairly expensive, although there's a bit of a range between some of the cheaper ones to some of the more expensive ones. So this one really is a bit more of a gamble. But we have one of everything to show you, because we did pick up the extra ones we didn't have on the aftermarket. So we'll show you everything in the set and talk about each of the creatures, and then talk about what we got and what we didn't get, so you can see how our luck panned out. So let's take a closer look at these. Derro are small, wild-haired dwarfkin who lurk in the Underdark in packs. The Derro were originally created when mind flayers experimented on dwarves, leaving them and their offspring irrevocably insane, like the Kuo-toa. Weak and paranoid, they would have died out long ago if not for the fact that many of them develop arcane powers. Those that do rise to the top of the Derro pecking order and are called savants. Derro originally appeared in 5th edition and Out of the Abyss, and were expanded upon in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. A regular Derro has a challenge rating of 1/4, and attacks with a hooked spear and a crossbow. A Derro Savant is a 5th level spellcaster with a challenge rating of 3. Dretches are small, weak, unintelligent demons who roam about in mobs looking for prey to torment. They can bite and claw, but their most potent attack may be the fetid cloud of poisonous gas they can expel. Dretches have a challenge rating of 1/4 and are found in the basic rules. They show up in Dungeon of the Mad Mage and Curse of Strahd. Much has been said about kobolds in previous videos, but they were made a playable race in 5th edition in Volo's Guide to Monsters. They are generally small, weak, and wiry creatures with a -2 to strength and a +2 to dexterity. They have a walking speed of 30 and dark vision. Once per rest, as an action on their turn, they can grovel pathetically to distract enemies within 10 feet of them, granting advantage to allies attacking the distracted combatants. They also have Pact tactics, giving them advantage on attacks against enemies that an ally is within 5 feet of. Goblins were also discussed at length in prior videos, and were also made playable in Volo's Guide to Monsters. Goblins are small, lithe, and surprisingly robust creatures with a +2 to dexterity and a +1 to constitution. They have a walking speed of 30 and dark vision. They gain the nimble escape ability, allowing them to hide or disengage as a bonus action, and the Fury of the Small ability, which allows them to deal extra damage to enemies that are larger than them once per day. A Quasit is a tiny shape-changing fiend. They're an infestation in the lower planes and are used as messengers and spies by more powerful demons due to their ability to change into various animal forms and become invisible. Otherwise, they're just used as snacks and playthings by the demons of the lower planes. They have a challenge rating of 1 and are found in the Monster Manual. They appear in Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Out of the Abyss, Curse of Strahd, and Tales from the Yawning Portal. A Cockatrice is a small monstrosity with the head of a chicken, the tail of a lizard, and the wings of a bat. It generally subsists on berries and small insects and rodents, but when it feels the least bit threatened, it will go into a frenzy, flying into the face of perceived attackers, clawing and biting for its life. This wouldn't be more than an annoyance if not for the fact that a bite from a Cockatrice can turn an unlucky adventurer to stone. The Cockatrice has a challenge rating of 1/2 and is found in the basic rules. They appear in random grasslands encounters and in Tales of the Yawning Portal. The Grey Dwarves lived deep in the Underdark and were eventually defeated and enslaved by the Mind Flayers. Like the other races that were subjugated by the Mind Flayers, the Grey Dwarves, or Duergar, were left broken by the experience. But they were one of the few races to break their own subjugation. Now they have become as tyrannical and merciless as the Mind Flayers, capturing slaves of their own. Duergar generally have the ability to enlarge themselves and turn invisible. The stat block for a generic Duergar can be found in the basic rules. It has a challenge rating of 1. Several other types of Duergar were introduced in Out of the Abyss and further expanded upon in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. They were made playable in the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Shield Dwarves call Northern Faerûn their home. They are considered mountain dwarves and have a +2 to their strength and a +2 to constitution. With the right stat distribution and armor proficiencies, the Shield Dwarf Wizard can be on the front lines, casting melee spells such as Booming Blade and Shocking Grasp, while still being able to withstand attacks and get themselves out of a tricky situation. Kuo-toa, another race enslaved and broken by the Mind Flayers, tend to try to capture rather than kill their enemies. They are generally armed with nets they use to restrain their foes. They also treat their shields with a sticky goo that can capture weapons. Some Kuo-toa come armed with pincer staves that can hold a creature at bay, though the Kuo-toa miniature with that weapon is in the Monster Menagerie 3 set. A Kuo-toa has a challenge rating of 3 and is found in the Monster Manual. They appear rather extensively in Dungeon of the Mad Mage and Out of the Abyss. Grimlocks were once humans who worshipped the Mind Flayers when their empire was at its zenith. They captured other intelligent humanoids and offered them as sacrifices to the Mind Flayers, who consumed their brains and threw their discarded bodies back to the Grimlocks to be eaten. After the fall of the Mind Flayer Empire, the Grimlocks were chased into the Underdark, where their eyes withered away in the darkness and their other senses heightened to compensate. They continue to serve the Mind Flayers when possible, venturing to the surface to capture potential sacrifices. Grimlocks have blind sight and attack with a spiked bone club. They have a challenge rating of 1/4 and can be found in the basic rules. Lizardfolk are primitive, reptilian, xenophobic humanoids who fiercely defend their territory, which is usually located around swamps or in jungles. With a neutral alignment and no real sense of morality, they kill when necessary and form alliances where expedient. In battle, they can bite, attack with a heavy club or javelin, or ram an enemy with their spiked shield. They have a challenge rating of 1/2 and can be found in the basic rules. They were also made playable in Volo's Guide to Monsters. They appear in many adventures and settings, including Wayfarer's Guide to Eberron, Hoard of the Dragon Queen, Rise of Tiamat, and Princes of the Apocalypse. Hobgoblins are lifelong warriors, answering the mustering call the day they can carry a weapon. They have rigid military traditions. When they are not at war, they are preparing for war. Their innate brutality tints their every interaction. The generic Hobgoblin is in the basic rules and has a challenge rating of 1/2. They were expanded upon and made playable in Volo's Guide to Monsters. There is no entry for a Drow Scout currently in 5th edition, but this mini can be used as a standard Drow with a challenge rating of 1/4 or as a Drow Elite Warrior. Elite Warriors are employed to defend noble houses or to conduct raids into the surface world to capture prisoners and spoils. They are able to multi-attack with their poisoned short swords. They're also armed with a hand crossbow that can fire poisoned bolts that are able to render a creature unconscious. A Drow Elite Warrior has a challenge rating of 5 and is found in the Monster Manual. Human wizards are common as player characters, NPCs, and villains in D&D campaigns. If you're building a player character, a standard human provides a +1 to all ability scores, including intelligence, which is nice. But it's the variant human which can really shine as a wizard, as they get a feat at level 1, if the variant human is allowed by your GM. Starting off with Warcaster, Alert, Elemental Adept, Spell Sniper, Resilient and Constitution, or Lucky can get your wizard off to a strong start. This set also includes an invisible variant of the human wizard. Half-Orcs excel in close quarters melee combat, which is normally exactly where you expect to find a party's paladin. Half-Orcs receive a +2 to strength and a +1 to constitution. They have dark vision, proficiency in intimidation, savage attacks, which apply extra damage on crit, and relentless endurance, which keeps them on their feet the first time they're brought to 0 hit points each day. In Drow noble houses, generally the first or second son of the matriarch is installed as the captain of the house's standing army of drow and slaves. The captain is well versed in strategy and tactics and can command units in combat, giving them extra attacks. It has the usual drow spellcasting ability and is armed with a scimitar, hand crossbow with poisoned arrows, and a whip. The whip is often used on allies to motivate them in battle, giving them advantage on their next attack. A Drow Captain has a challenge rating of 9 and is found in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. A Drow House Captain is featured in Waterdeep Dragon Heist and can be incorporated into any adventure featuring Drow. Quaggoths once existed as primitive hunters on the surface world. They lived as tribes with their own culture and language. When elves appeared on the mortal plane, they hunted the Quaggoth race almost to extinction, driving the survivors into the Underdark, where they lost their culture and became brutal cannibals to survive. Because of their hatred for the elves, they became easily manipulated by the Drow, who now keep and train them as essentially guard dogs. Quaggoths have a challenge rating of 2 and can be found in the Monster Manual. They appear in Out of the Abyss, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and in random Underdark encounters. Ettercaps are humanoid arachnids who infest areas of the forest with webs, spiders, and insects. They are particularly hostile toward fey creatures, often trying to capture sprites or entrap dryads. Fey creatures will sometimes approach an adventuring party in the hopes of finding someone to rid their home of an Ettercap infestation. Ettercaps are medium creatures who attack with their claws, webbing, and poisonous bite. They have a challenge rating of 2 and can be found in the basic rules. They appear in Horde of the Dragon Queen, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and random forest encounters. Elemental Myrmidons are previously free elemental creatures who are summoned and bound into suits of plate armor and exist to serve their creators. A Water Myrmidon attacks with a trident that can also apply cold damage and slow a creature's movement speed. They appear in Princes of the Apocalypse, which is where their stat block appears. You can also find their stat block in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. They have a challenge rating of 7. When a demon is killed outside of the Abyss, its body generally dissolves into a puddle of ichor, and then instantaneously reforms in the Abyss, with its mind and memory intact. If it's killed and somehow prevented from reforming in the Abyss, it sometimes becomes a shadow demon, a semi-incorporeal fiend that can hide in the shadows, move through objects, and claw through enemies, dealing psychic rather than physical damage, as it feasts on the victim's fears and insecurities. It has a challenge rating of 4 and can be found in the Monster Manual. It shows up in Storm King's Thunder, Curse of Strahd, Summon Greater Demon Spells, Out of the Abyss, Tomb of Annihilation, Princes of the Apocalypse, and Dungeon of the Mad Mage. When a beautiful elven woman uses her wiles to corrupt and control others, the curse of the Banshee may take over. This curse removes all joy from the elf and leaves her feeling distraught when among the living. Eventually, death takes hold, and the Banshee becomes undead and bound to the place of its demise, forever remembering its life and failing to take responsibility for its actions, continuing to covet beauty for beauty's sake. She can inflict fear and necrotic damage on foes, and can instantly bring creatures to 0 hit points with her mournful wail. A Banshee has a challenge rating of 4 and can be found in the basic rules. Banshees appear in Lost Mines of Phandelver, random forest and coastal encounter tables, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and Curse of Strahd. This Myrmidon is an air elemental, summoned and trapped inside a set of plate armor. It attacks with a flail and lightning strikes, which can stun a creature. Its stat block also appears in Princes of the Apocalypse and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, and it has a challenge rating of 7. There is no specific stat block for a Drow Archmage, but a Drow Mage is detailed in the Monster Manual. Drow males of wealth who are not strong enough to become warriors may turn to the arcane arts for survival. A few Drow females with natural arcane ability may become mages as well, though less commonly. Drow mages are 10th level spellcasters who can summon a Quasit or Shadow Demon and can cast Cloud Kill, Greater Invisibility, and Evard's Black Tentacles, among other spells. They have a challenge rating of 7. This mini can also be used for a few important NPCs throughout published adventures, such as Vizarin Devere from Out of the Abyss, Driven Freth from Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and the Black Spider from the Lost Mines of Phandelver. The Kuo-toa Archpriest is responsible for enforcing belief in whatever mad god that particular tribe of Kuo-toa follows. The Archpriest is a 10th level spellcaster with cleric abilities. The rules and decrees are enforced by Kuo-toa whips and monitors. The Kuo-toa Archpriest has a challenge rating of 6 and can be found in the Monster Manual. They appear in Dungeon of the Mad Mage and Out of the Abyss. Trolls are unsophisticated, forever hungry giantkin who mostly roam the forest in search of food, but who will sometimes be lured into doing the bidding of a more powerful being with the promise of food. They have regenerative properties that can only be stopped by fire and acid. If in combat with someone able to do acid or fire damage, the troll is intelligent enough to target those creatures first. Trolls have a challenge rating of 5 and can be found in the basic rules. Several varieties of trolls were introduced in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. When a Drow's accomplishments draw the attention of their goddess Lolth, she may summon the Drow to her demon web pits, where she puts it through a series of trials. Should the Drow fail these trials, she will transform it into a Drider, which is a horrific combination of Drow and giant spider. It goes mad and is driven out of Drow society. The Drow can attack with a longbow or longsword, as well as its poisonous bite. A spellcaster Drow turned into a Drider may retain its ability to cast. A Drider has a challenge rating of 6 and can be found in the basic rules. Driders appear in Dungeon of the Mad Mage and Out of the Abyss. Carrion Crawlers establish habitats in areas where creatures die frequently. You can find them in caves, sewers, dungeons, marshes, and forests. They scurry along the ceilings or walls to avoid predators, set up ambushes around blind corners, and follow light sources patiently until the smell of blood causes them to attack. They attempt to inject their venom into their prey, paralyzing them, so the bodies can then be carried away to be eaten in peace. A Carrion Crawler has a challenge rating of 2 and can be found in the Monster Manual. They're found in Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Out of the Abyss, and Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Ropers resemble stalagmites and stalactites that are found throughout the Underdark. Unsuspecting adventurers often find themselves surprised to find the rock formation overhead snapping open one large eye. Sticky tentacles then shoot out, trying to ensnare them. Ropers can digest almost anything aside from platinum, magic items, and gemstones. These can often be recovered from their stomachs if the adventuring party is able to slay one. The tentacles are able to sap the strength of anyone in their grasp. Ropers have a challenge rating of 5 and are found in the basic rules. They appear in Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Out of the Abyss, Princess of the Apocalypse, Storm King's Thunder, Tales from the Yawning Portal, and Horde of the Dragon Queen. Vrocks resemble human-vulture hybrids. They emit a blood-curdling shriek which can stun a person, then swoop in on leathery wings and attempt to rend the flesh from their victims using their beak and talons. They're also able to release a cloud of poisonous spores from their wings. They're drawn to shiny objects and will often fight amongst themselves for a particularly pretty piece of jewelry. Vrocks have a challenge rating of 6 and can be found in the basic rules. They appear in Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Out of the Abyss, Tales from the Yawning Portal, and Princess of the Apocalypse. A Chasme is a large demon that looks like a cross between a humanoid and a fly. It ranks low on the demon pecking order and is usually employed by stronger demons to root out and torture traitors or engage in other activities that require a particularly cruel touch. A Chasme has a challenge rating of 6 and can be found in the Monster Manual. They appear in Out of the Abyss. Nightmares, or demon horses, are used as fiery steeds for evil demons, devils, and other incorrigible ne'er-do-wells who have a flair for the dramatic. Nightmares are created by cruelly removing the wings from a Pegasus through dark magic, which bends the normally noble creature's mind to evil. Nightmares have a walking speed of 60 and a flying speed of 90, and can carry creatures into the ethereal plane and back again. They have a challenge rating of 3 and are found in the Monster Manual. Djinni are chaotic good elementals from the elemental plane of air. They are good-natured, playful rulers of various kingdoms and principalities made up of floating islands of cloud stuff. Djinni can tolerate brief periods of servitude if bound by an arcane master, but they resent the long line of magic wielders who've imprisoned their kind in bottles, iron flasks, and the like over the years. Djinni have a challenge rating of 11 and are found in the basic rules. They appear in Princess of the Apocalypse. Efreet are large, evil elementals who generally dwell on the elemental plane of fire. They are orderly, haughty, and cruel slavers who travel to the other planes in search of beings to bring back and force into servitude. When they fly, their lower half turns into a column of fire. They often come into conflict with the Marids from the elemental plane of water, Djinni from the plane of air, and Dao from the plane of earth. They have a challenge rating of 11 and are found in the basic rules. They appear in Princess of the Apocalypse, Rise of Tiamat, Tales from the Yawning Portal, and Dungeon of the Mad Mage. Wood Elves make natural and adept rangers. They come armed with a +1 to Wisdom, which is their spellcasting ability, and a +2 to Dexterity. They have the Fleet of Foot ability, increasing their walking speed to 35, and are able to attempt to hide while lightly obscured by natural phenomenon like light foliage or heavy rain. This miniature can be used for several player character classes or NPCs. A Blink Dog is a lawful good fey creature that resembles a hound. It gets its name from its ability to teleport up to 40 feet away. They were frequently employed by Fey hunters in their attempt to drive out displacer beast infestations. Blink dogs and displacer beasts continue to attack each other on sight to this day. They have a challenge rating of 1/4 and can be found in the basic rules. They appear as the result of Conjure Fey and Conjure Woodland Being spells. There are currently only 2 stat blocks for bugbears, a regular bugbear and a bugbear chief. Bugbears are cousins to goblins and hobgoblins, though they make uncertain allies to either. Bugbears tend to dominate goblins, and while they may agree to serve as enforcers for hobgoblins, they demand large amounts of money and coin in return. Bugbears have a challenge rating of 1 and are found in the basic rules. Bugbear chiefs have the ability to multi-attack, wear stronger armor, and have greater resistances to various effects like poison and charm. They have a challenge rating of 3 and are found in the monster manual. Null warbands are led by pack lords, also known as champions of Yeenoghu. They anoint their body with runes and trophies in the hopes of earning Yeenoghu's favor. Pack lords generally attack with large heavy weapons, such as glaives, longbows, and flails. The Pack Lord can inspire gnolls to make extra attacks. A Gnoll Pack Lord has a challenge rating of 2 and is found in the Monster Manual. They are found in Out of the Abyss, Princes of the Apocalypse, and in random forest and desert encounter tables. Elder Brains forbid Mind Flayers from pursuing arcane power, but some Mind Flayers see spellbooks as a tempting way to gain more authoritative control. The power required to attain lichdom is immense, but 9 deviant Mind Flayers sought a shortcut. They, and the ones who came after them, are called the Alhun. Alhuns are not true liches, but use a device known as a periaptive mind trapping to attain a similar effect. The process is laid out in Volo's Guide to Monsters. An Alhun has a challenge rating of 10. A Mind Flayer who attains true lichdom also has a stat block in Volo's Guide. A Mind Flayer Lich, or Elithalich, has a challenge rating of 22. Rust monsters may not be the most dangerous creature a party of adventurers may encounter, but they may be the most hated. Rust monsters have the ability to instantly corrode ferrous metals and then consume the dust they create, quickly leaving an adventurer defenseless with ruined armor and weapons. They live in subterranean caverns and stalk anything carrying the metals they crave. Rust monsters have a challenge rating of 1/2 and are found in the basic rules. They appear in Princes of the Apocalypse, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Zorn are earth elementals who prefer not to leave their home in the elemental plane of earth. They sniff out and sustain themselves on gemstones and precious metals, moving effortlessly through the earth and targeting miners and adventurers who carry such items. Zorn are intelligent and not evil, so they will attempt to plead and bargain with creatures for the food they need, only resorting to bullying and violence if they're starving. Zorn have a challenge rating of 5 and are found in the basic rules. They appear in Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Princes of the Apocalypse, Tomb of Annihilation, and Out of the Abyss. Copper dragons are notorious pranksters and joke-tellers. They adore bards who regale them with stories and songs, often carving out a portion of their own lair to host a friendly bard. They grow annoyed with creatures who do not laugh at their jokes or take their pranks in good humor. And like most dragons, they have a covetous streak and hoard treasures, particularly rare gems and metals. This mini is about the size of a young copper dragon, which has a challenge rating of 7 and is found in the basic rules. A Helmed Horror is a constructed, more advanced and intelligent version of animated armor. It's able to discern its owner's intentions rather than blindly follow the literal orders it's given. While it does engage in tactics in battle, such as attacking from the air and targeting weaker spellcasters first, it is not able to fortify its position or set up defensive measures. Helmed Horrors have a challenge rating of 4 and are found in the Monster Manual. They appear in Horde of the Dragon Queen, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Rise of Tiamat, Tales from the Yawning Portal, Princes of the Apocalypse, and Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Grell are alien aberrations who classify others as either edibles, inedibles, or great eaters, those that pose a threat to the Grell. They may allow an adventuring party to clear out the larger threats in a dungeon before attacking the party themselves. In battle, their tentacles are their most dangerous weapon, capable of injecting victims with paralyzing poison. They're often found in colonies in the Underdark. Grell have a challenge rating of 3 and are found in the Monster Manual. They appear in Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Dragon Heist, Out of the Abyss, Princes of the Apocalypse, and Tales from the Yawning Portal. A spectator is a lesser beholder that is summoned in a ritual to guard an important area for its summoner for a period of 101 years.
The isolation of their role often leads them to lose their grip on reality, inventing imaginary enemies or talking about themselves in the third person. A spectator freed of its duties is free to do as it likes, but it tends to stay near the area of its service. Without purpose, though, its madness may flourish. Spectators have a challenge rating of 3 and are found in the Monster Manual. They appear in Lost Mines of Phandelver, Out of the Abyss, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Hook horrors are large, underdark predators. Their territory is often a cacophony of clacks and scrapes, as the hook horrors communicate with each other through a complex series of strikes against their own exoskeleton. They use their hooks to climb cave walls and ceilings, often getting the drop on their prey from above. Each hook horror clan is ruled by the eldest female member and is centered around its well-defended nest of eggs. A hook horror has a challenge rating of 3 and is found in the Monster Manual. They appear in Out of the Abyss, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Princes of the Apocalypse, and Tales from the Yawning Portal. Gold dragons are the most powerful of the metallic dragons. While aloof and often grim, they are considered fair and wise. They consume gemstones and pearls and appreciate such offerings, as long as there is not a quid pro quo implied. Older gold dragons may shapeshift into the guise of an old man to visit a town and learn of the latest gossip or to help others in small ways. Or it may change shape into a friendly animal to befriend a traveling bard or a small child as they travel through its territory. Adult gold dragons have a challenge rating of 17 and are found in the basic rules. They appear in Waterdeep Dragon Heist and The Rise of Tiamat. This grotesque combination of ape and boar possesses a surprisingly cunning intellect. In combat, they can telepathically order their troops, frighten enemies with a surprising attack of light, teleport behind enemy lines, and swoop in from above to attack the softer enemies who may try to avoid direct combat. Nalfeshnees have a challenge rating of 13 and are found in the basic rules. They appear in Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Out of the Abyss, Tomb of Annihilation, and Tales from the Yawning Portal. The most narcissistic dragons may sacrifice their connection to their kin and the dragon gods in order to escape death, allowing themselves to be transformed by powerful mages and dark rituals into Dracoliches. Dracoliches are more nefarious than even the most evil dragons, staying hidden in the shadows while developing plots and gathering armies of servants to rule over their domain. They are described in detail in the Monster Manual, and a template is provided to modify existing dragon stat blocks into Dracoliches. A red Dracolich would have a challenge rating of 18. A blue Dracolich is found in Dungeon of the Mad Mage. Beholders are supremely arrogant and paranoid. Many are xenophobic isolationists who create layers where they can be left alone to toil on their schemes and revel in their trophies and treasure. Others channel their arrogance into tyranny, wanting to rule over all the lesser creatures and create a vast network of spies, soldiers, and laborers to work on their behalf. They attack with powerful eye rays and neutralize threats with an anti-magic field that emanates from their large central eye. A beholder has a challenge rating of 13 and is found in Tomb of Annihilation, Out of the Abyss, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and Dungeon of the Mad Mage. When a true dragon is born in the Shadowfell or spends too much time there, they can become corrupted by its darkness and desolation. Over a period of years, the dragon is transformed into a spectral shadow of its former self. This process is discussed in the Monster Manual, and an example young red shadow dragon is presented. They also provide a template to adapt any dragon to its shadow form. For example, they gain resistance to necrotic damage, proficiency in stealth, resistance to most damage types while in darkness or shadow, and new attacks including a necrotic shadow breath. A shadow dragon appears in Dungeon of the Mad Mage. While no mention is made of other shadow creatures, it is not difficult to apply the same general template to creatures besides dragons. A beholder that has been drawn into the Shadowfell could become consumed with the darkness of the land, giving over its madness to the shadows. The template is easily adapted. The only alteration would be changing one of the existing beholder rays into a shadow ray that has a similar effect as a shadow breath on the aforementioned dragon. This set has a lot of good player character minis, drow, classic creatures like carrion crawlers, trolls, hobgoblins. Also, a lot of the creatures are just fun, like the Djinni and the Efreet, the Mind Flayer Lich, the Beholder, the Nightmare. I should also note that unlike most sets, none of these arrived broken or damaged. The paint jobs and sculpts seem perfectly acceptable considering this is an older set now. Drawbacks to this set. I think some of the rares are uninspired. The Zorn, the Wood Elf Archer, but then you have a few great ones like the Beholder and the Dracolich and the Gold Dragon. I suppose it's better to have uninspired rares than uninspired commons or uncommons, but it takes a little bit of the fun out of it when you buy a brick and you get a Bugbear as one of your 3 rares. Also, this set requires a lot more construction than the other sets. I abhor the little pegs for the flying creatures. It's difficult for me, at least, to fit the pieces together, and then often the little rods holding the flying creatures are really fragile, so they fall apart anytime you try to move them. I probably just need to glue the little plastic rods in permanently, but I'm afraid that will lead to a lot of broken pieces if they get jostled in storage. Also, the Dracolich arrives in 3 parts and needs to be put together. It's not as bad as getting a mini still on the sprue, of course, but this set requires a lot more labor to be table ready, and comes in more pieces that need to be kept together. If you're just looking to buy individual minis on the aftermarket, hopefully this video gave you a good look at what's available. If you're considering buying a case of these, again, you need to be aware that you'll only get 3/4 of the rares. Currently, each rare ranges from about $5 to about $70 on the aftermarket, though prices fluctuate pretty wildly, so it can be quite a gamble. I lucked out and got most of the expensive ones. I got the Dracolich and the Beholder and the Shadow Beholder and the Spectator and the Gold Dragon, but your mileage may vary. This picture shows everything we got in the case. You can see the distribution of commons, uncommons, and rares. And now we'll add in the ones that we bought on the aftermarket to fill out the whole set. And that's Rage of Demons. Now, when you're deciding which mini sets you want to buy, it really depends on which campaigns you're running or what the setting of your campaign is. This one's a good one, of course, if you're running Out of the Abyss. Also, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, because everything shows up in Dungeon of the Mad Mage, so you're going to need a lot of minis. A lot of these also show up in Princess of the Apocalypse. Anything that you run in the Underdark, if you're running anything in the Abyss, this is also a good set. It features a lot of Drow, it features demons, obviously, and we have the Beholders, a couple of dragons. This set, unlike some of them, only has a few player character minis, but I quite like, they're over here, I quite like them in this set. So that's this set, Rage of Demons. If you enjoyed this video, you can help the channel by liking the video, by leaving a comment, by posting the videos in other communities that you think may enjoy it, and joining us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. All those links are in the description below. And I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time on The Gallant Goblin.